The world was once ruled by light until the violet fire came from the stars and burned across the horizon. The sea turned to glass. The mountains whispered in fear. Men and women bowed to the flames that rose higher than the temples they once prayed in. Those who survived the first fire said that the gods had returned to claim what mortals had stolen. Those gods were not made of flesh or thought, but of endless violet flame that spoke through the wind and the dreams of the living. In the ashes of the old world stood a single city named Valorian. Its walls were built from black stone that shimmered faintly at night as if remembering the fire that had shaped it. Inside those walls lived people who no longer trusted the sun. They wore silver masks and prayed in silence. They called themselves the Keepers of the Abyss and claimed that the violet gods had spared them for a purpose. Among them lived a young man named Arian. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and his hands bore the mark of the fire even though he had never touched it. When he was born, the priests said he had been chosen by the flame. His mother cried because she knew what that meant. The chosen were not allowed to grow old. They were meant to serve as vessels for the gods. When the time came, they would be taken beneath the city to the Hall of Embers, where the violet fire waited to claim them. Arian grew up surrounded by whispers. The other children avoided him. Some called him the cursed son. Others believed he could hear the gods in his sleep. They were not wrong. Each night, Arian dreamed of a crown floating above an endless sea. The crown was made of black metal, and its edges glowed with violet light. A voice always came from the darkness saying, "The abyss remembers its king." Years passed. The fires outside the city grew weaker, but the faith of the people grew stronger. Every 7th year, a new vessel was chosen. The old vessel would walk into the Hall of Embers and never return. The priests said they ascended to the violet realm to serve the gods forever. But Arian had once followed a procession in secret and had seen the truth. The fire did not ascend anyone. It devoured them. Their screams filled the hall, and the violet flames danced brighter as if feeding on their souls. Arian began to doubt. He started to wander the lower tunnels beneath Valorian, where forbidden texts were hidden. There he met an old woman named Syra, who had once been a priestess before the first fire. She told him that the gods of violet flame were not divine, but remnants of an ancient power buried beneath the sea. When the world broke, they escaped and fed on the belief of mortals. The crown he saw in his dreams was real. It was the key that could seal or free them completely. Arian listened in silence. Syra's eyes glowed faintly with violet light, as if part of her still belonged to the fire. She said, "The crown is lost in the abyss. Only one who carries both mortal and divine fire can claim it. That is you, Arian of Valorian. The gods marked you not to serve them, but to end them." Those words burned inside him. For the first time, he understood why the flames whispered his name at night. He decided to descend into the abyss itself. But the abyss was forbidden. No mortal had ever returned from it. It was said to lie beneath the sea of mirrors, far beyond the walls of Valorian, where the reflection of the world ends. Arian prepared for the journey. He wrapped his hands in black cloth to hide the mark of the flame. He carried a blade of obsidian forged in silence. Before leaving, he stood atop the walls of Valorian and looked down at the city. The towers shimmered faintly beneath the eternal twilight. He whispered a vow, "I will not kneel before false gods." That night he left through the northern gate. The guards did not stop him, for they were blindfolded as part of their faith. He walked across the plain of ash where no wind blew. The ground cracked beneath his boots, and the air smelled of forgotten fire. After 3 days, he reached the edge of the Sea of Mirrors. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the stars like a sheet of glass. Beneath the surface, faint violet light moved, as if something alive waited below. He built a small raft from driftwood and set out under the moon. The reflection of the sky on the water made it seem as if he was sailing through space. Hours turned into days. He ate nothing. He slept only in fragments. Then on the 7th night, the water beneath him began to glow. A voice rose from the depths. "Mortal of the mark, do you seek the crown?" Arian gripped the edge of the raft. "I seek to end the gods that feed on us," he said. The voice laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You seek death then, for no mortal may touch the crown without burning away. Yet you carry our flame within you. Perhaps you are not only mortal." The water erupted in light. A vortex opened beneath him, pulling the raft down. Arian tried to resist, but the pull was too strong. He fell into the abyss. The sea swallowed him whole. When he opened his eyes again, he stood on solid ground. Around him stretched an endless cavern lit by rivers of violet fire. Strange structures rose from the ground like bones of titans. The air shimmered with heat, and whispers filled the space. "Welcome to the heart of the abyss," the voice said. Arian turned and saw shapes forming from the flame. They were tall and faceless, their bodies made of living fire. They surrounded him like a circle of stars. "We are the first light. We are the last breath. Kneel, mortal, and become our vessel." Arian drew his blade. The fire reflected along its edge like liquid glass. "I will never kneel," he said. The faceless gods laughed. "Then you will burn with us." The flames surged forward. Arian swung his blade through the air and the fire split apart. Pain seared his hands, but he did not stop. He fought through the burning wind. Every time his blade struck the flame, it screamed like a living being. The ground shook and rivers of fire erupted around him. But the mark on his hand began to glow brighter than the flames. His blood boiled, yet his will did not break. The gods hesitated. One of them spoke in a tone that trembled. "You carry the seed of our fire, yet you do not obey. Who gave you such will?" Arian raised his hand. "My mother gave me life. My people gave me pain. The fire gave me purpose. I owe nothing to gods who hide behind fear." The violet flames trembled as if his words wounded them. Then the crown appeared in the air above the abyss. It was vast and black, made of metal that seemed older than the stars. Its edges bled light that burned the ground. The voice said, "Take it if you dare. But if you do, your mortal heart will cease to beat." Arian stepped forward. The air tore around him. He reached out his hand. The moment his fingers touched the crown, his body filled with fire. Visions flooded his mind. He saw the creation of worlds, the fall of stars, the birth of the violet gods. They were born from a dying sun that refused to fade. They devoured everything to stay alive. They feared only one thing, the silence of mortals who no longer believed. Arian screamed as the crown burned through him. Yet in that pain he saw truth. The gods were bound to mortal faith. Without worship they could not exist. He clenched his fist around the crown and shouted into the fire, "I believe in nothing but freedom." The abyss roared. The violet light shattered. The gods screamed as their flames began to fade. The cavern trembled. Arian fell to his knees. The crown melted into his flesh. The fire became part of him. The gods' voices grew distant like echoes dying in an endless hall. When he opened his eyes again, the cavern was silent. The rivers of fire had turned to dust. Arian stood alone, holding the shadow of what was once the crown. He felt no pain, only a deep calm. But the whisper returned softer now. "You have silenced us, mortal, but the flame within you will never die. It will seek to rise again. It will burn those who follow you." Arian walked through the darkness until he found a passage leading upward. After what felt like days, he emerged on a shore. The sea of mirrors was gone. In its place lay an expanse of black sand. The stars above no longer glowed violet, but white and cold. He realized the world had changed. He turned toward Valorian, far beyond the horizon. The city would still stand waiting for a god who would never return. He began to walk back, knowing that the fire within him would one day test his resolve again. For though the gods had fallen, their crown now rested in the heart of a man, and the man who carried it could either save or destroy what remained of the world. Arian walked for many days across lands that no longer breathed. The ground cracked under his feet, and dust rose like ghosts of the old world. Where there had once been rivers, there were scars of glass. The wind no longer carried warmth, only whispers of what had been lost. Yet deep within him, the violet fire pulsed like a second heart. It did not speak, but it lived, and in the silence between heartbeats he felt it waiting. When he reached the ruins of the outer walls of Valorian, the air changed. The black stone shimmered faintly as if remembering his presence. The city that had once been filled with prayers now stood in eerie quiet. The silver-masked priests were gone. Only their masks remained lying in the streets like pale faces staring at nothing. The temples were shattered and the altars empty. It was as if the city itself had exhaled its last breath when the gods had fallen. Arian walked through the empty streets. His reflection followed him in the shards of broken glass. He entered the great hall where once the high priest had ruled. The throne of obsidian stood untouched. Above it, the great mural of the violet flame had cracked and faded. As he stood there, a faint voice came from the shadows. "You returned." From behind a broken pillar emerged Syra, the old priestess. Her eyes were dim now, yet still alive. She looked at him with a mixture of awe and sorrow. "You did it," she said. "The world changed the moment the fire died. The sea turned to dust. The sky bled white. The faith that held Valorian together vanished in an instant." Arian nodded. "The gods are gone. Their fire sleeps within me." Syra's hands trembled. "Then it is not over," she whispered. "The crown of the abyss cannot die. It only changes shape. You carry it now. You are both mortal and divine. The flame will test you. It will seek to rule again through you." Arian lowered his gaze. "I know. Every breath I take, I feel it stirring. It wants me to command. It wants me to build temples in my name." "Then you must resist," Syra said. "For if you kneel to it, even once the gods will rise again through your shadow." Arian left the hall and walked into the heart of the city, where the Hall of Embers once glowed. The violet flames were gone, but the stones still burned faintly with old heat. He knelt before them, not to pray, but to remember. He whispered to the ashes of those who had died before him, "Your voices will not be forgotten. Your pain will not feed gods again." Days passed. Word of his return spread beyond the ruins. Survivors came from distant lands, drawn by stories of a man who had ended the violet gods. They gathered at the gates of Valorian. Farmers, warriors, wanderers. They called him the Flame Bearer. They built fires at night and sang songs of freedom. Arian watched them from the walls with a heavy heart. He had freed them from divine chains, only to see them forging new ones in his name. Syra warned him, "This is how it begins again." The crown whispers through hope. Arian decided to speak to the people. He climbed the steps of the old temple and faced the crowd. Thousands knelt before him. The sight made his chest tighten. He raised his hand, and the faint glow of violet light shimmered across his palm. The crowd gasped. He said, "I am not your god. I am only a man who carried fire through darkness. Do not build temples for me. Build lives. Do not kneel before my name. Stand and walk as free souls." But faith is a stubborn flame. The people bowed deeper. They cried, "Flame Bearer, guide us. Without gods, we are lost." The violet fire within him pulsed harder. It whispered through his blood, "They are yours. Take them, rule them. Bring order to their fear." Arian clenched his fists until his knuckles bled. He shouted, "Leave me. Leave all of us. I will not be your vessel again." The fire inside him trembled like a wounded beast. The ground cracked. The people fell back in terror. From the fissures burst streaks of violet light, twisting into forms that resembled the gods he had slain. They screamed in fury. "You cannot destroy what you are. You are the crown now." Arian raised his sword of obsidian. The blade hummed with a dark song. He struck the ground, and the light recoiled. He felt the fire tearing at his veins. To save the people, he fled into the desert beyond Valorian, where no life remained. The fire followed him like a shadow that would not die. Nights became endless. The sky above him no longer showed stars, only a pale white void. The voice of the crown grew louder with every step. "You could rule all that remains. You could rebuild the heavens," Arian whispered. "I seek no throne. I seek silence." At the edge of the desert, he found a chasm that led deep underground. The air there was cool and heavy with forgotten echoes. He descended until the last trace of light vanished. In the darkness, he sat and closed his eyes. The fire burned in his chest like a caged sun. He spoke within his mind. "You want to live. You want to burn. But you will burn no more." The flame answered in a voice that sounded like his own. "You are me. You cannot silence me without silencing yourself." "Then so be it," Arian said. "I will not let you rule. If I must vanish with you, then the world will remain free." He drew his sword and pressed its edge against his heart. The crown within him laughed. "Foolish mortal, you think death will save them. I am eternal." But Arian's resolve was stronger than pain. He drove the blade into his chest. The cavern filled with light brighter than 1,000 suns. His scream echoed through the earth. For a moment the world above trembled. Mountains cracked. Seas shifted. Then silence fell. When the light faded, there was nothing left of Arian, only a faint glow etched into the stone floor like the mark of a burning crown. The violet fire had been sealed once more, Centuries passed. Valorian became legend. The Sea of Mirrors turned to dust, and the names of the violet gods were forgotten. Yet beneath the earth, a faint glow remained. Then one night, in a distant age, a child was born beneath a white sky. Her eyes gleamed faintly with violet light. The midwife shivered and whispered, "The mark of fire returns." In her dreams, the girl saw a man of shadow kneeling before a broken crown. His voice echoed softly, "Remember who you are. Do not kneel. Stand and be free." The child grew, and the world changed again. The stories of Arion became songs sung by wanderers who did not believe in gods but in courage. They said that when mortals kneel before false divinity, the crown of the abyss stirs, waiting for a heart strong enough to challenge it again. In the ruins of Valerian, the wind still carried whispers. Some said that at night a faint light could be seen deep within the chasm where Arion had fallen. A figure of fire and shadow walked there, guarding the world from the return of the violet flame. Others said that he had become the last god not of power, but of defiance, the god who refused worship, the god who knelt to no one. But the truth was older than stories. In the heart of the abyss, the fire still breathed, waiting for the moment when belief would awaken it once more. Because mortals cannot live without faith, and faith cannot exist without fire. The crown of the abyss was not merely a thing of power. It was the mirror of the human soul, reflecting its hunger for meaning. Every prayer, every dream, every fear was a spark feeding it. And though Arion had sealed it within himself, his sacrifice only delayed its return. One day, another seeker would stand at the edge of the Sea of Mirrors and hear the voice of the depths calling again. "Do you seek the crown?" And the cycle would begin anew for as long as there are mortals who look to the heavens and wonder, who rules above them? In that endless question lies the true fire that never dies. For even when the gods of violet flame have turned to dust and the last temple has crumbled to sand, the will of those who refuse to kneel will still burn brighter than any divine light, and somewhere in the silence of eternity, Orion's voice will whisper again. "Across the abyss am the flame that kneels to none. I am the crown that burns itself to guard the free. The world will forget his name, but his defiance will remain carved into the heart of all who walk beneath the stars. For the crown of the abyss does not belong to gods or kings. It belongs to those who dare to stand before the fire and say, 'I am mortal and I will not kneel.'